Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Culture Cabinet. I hope that you're all doing well. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video. Today, we will start officially this new series of video, which is going to be called Success Stories, and how some people or some organizations manage to successfully transform their culture. Today, we will talk about one company, which is Microsoft, and how one guy overnight managed to successfully transfer the culture of Microsoft. Well, this man once said, our ability to change the culture of our company is actually the leading indicator of our future success. And this guy is called Satya Nadella, the current CEO of Microsoft. In my previous video where I talk about what is corporate culture and why it's really important to have a good corporate culture, which by the way you can check out in the link above, I say how a good corporate culture is actually a key indicator of one's company value. And I say that life expectancy of companies has tremendously changed compared to 1995, which, at this point, originally the life expectancy of a company was around 75 years. But around 2 decades ago, according to the research of I4CP, the top 5 companies by market capitalization were those ones. And then around 2010, it evolved to those ones. And then now, around 2020, it's those ones. And when you look at this ranking, you can see that there's one company which kept its seat and even managed to climb the ranking up. And this company is obviously Microsoft. But Microsoft's story is also made of a lot of pitfalls. At the end of the last century, Microsoft was the most powerful and profitable company in the world. In 1996, their market capitalization was around $2 billion, and they managed to keep that constant growth to reach around $14 billion, even throughout the Great Recession around 2007-2009. The market cap even reached $583 billion at some point. A term that was commonly used was the Microsoft millionaire, due to Microsoft's capacity to make their employees richer and richer through equity grant. Some companies were even so jealous and resenting of Microsoft's success that some of them complained that Microsoft actually illegally violated the US laws against unfair competition. After a series of trials, Microsoft was found guilty of illegally trying to maintain monopoly in 2001. 2 weeks into the decade and during this whole mess, Bill Gates relinquished his role of CEO to Steve Ballmer, and this one guy actually brought Microsoft on a highway to hell. While Steve's devotion and loyalty to Microsoft as a top cheerleader was definitely appreciated, his style was, however, let's say, passionate.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Ballmer!
And those who knew him were not really surprised at all. Once he even ripped his vocal cord in a meeting in Japan just by screaming "Windows, Windows" so loud that it required surgery. I mean, he's hilarious. After 14 years following a series of foolish management decisions, from internal politics being the key to career success, or to being rewarding for colleagues' failure as part of the stack ranking. Stack ranking by definition is a performance model. Every unit was forced to declare a certain percentage of top performers, good performers, poor performers, which means that in a team of 10 people, regardless of how performant you are or how productive you are or how successful you are always going to be compared against people in your team. And this actually pushed employees to compete against each other rather than competing against other companies. Through their inability to jump on emerging technologies and killing innovation seen as slowing the processes down. They even bought Nokia for $7.5 billion in 2014. Drop the mic. I'm done. It's worth to say that Steve Ballmer was under huge pressure as Microsoft was slowly moving away from its monopoly, and with the emergence of the internet and all the new technologies, smartphones, tablets, cloud computing, etc. In 2014, Ballmer decided that it was time for him to move on, much to the delight of journalists who took a lot of pleasure in commenting his resignation. Steve Ballmer finally figured out a way to make some money for himself. He quit. Ballmer is roughly the tech industry's equivalent to Mikhail Gorbachev, without the coup and the tanks and the Red Square. In the same year, Satya Nadella was named CEO. But who is this guy? Well, Satya Nadella was born in Hyderabad in India and studied electrical engineering. Nadella joined Microsoft in 1992, and he made his name by running Microsoft search engine Bing and by taking over Azure, the company cloud computing platform. He came up through the ranks of Microsoft naturally, and his really collaborative and inspiring approach directly stood out when he became CEO. He was actually the polar opposite of Ballmer. Calm, introspective, empathetic, humble, honest, and candid. He even told Microsoft employees the first day he was here as a CEO to stop drinking the Microsoft Kool-Aid. Which basically meant just try to stop being such butt liquor and be honest about the product that you're building here. Nadella had a huge challenge to take on, which was to stick Microsoft pieces together again. And guess what? He revolutionized Microsoft culture almost overnight and turned the business success upside down. His motto in life was all about learning, and it's been the essence of his leadership style from day one. Some employees even said that every PowerPoint presentation began with a Satya quote. One day, Satya's wife gave him Carol Drake's book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, because she thought he might resonate with the philosophy and idea of growth mindset. Apart from Nadella, Carol is probably the person most responsible for Microsoft culture shift. The concept of growth mindset suggests that intelligence and talent are not fixed traits, and that the true mark of success is one's ability to learn. Let me explain. Dwex, when she was around 11-12 years old in 6th grade, had a teacher who seated students in the class according to their IQ. So she was basically comfortable with the idea that IQ was the only determinant of one's intelligence and abilities. So the students at the back felt like shit, and the students in the front were uncomfortable because you were only as good as your last test score. From her research, she actually found out that people who adopt a growth mindset leads to a desire to learn and therefore a tendency to persist in the face of adversity, to see failure as an essence to mastery, to learn from criticism, to find lessons and inspirations in others' success, and to embrace challenges with agility. While a fixed mindset actually leads to a desire to look smart, and therefore to give up easily, see failure as fruitless or worse, ignore useful negative feedback, see other success as a threat, and avoid challenges. Let's explain it simply like Nadella did. Take two skills in school. One, the first kid has a lot of innate capabilities but is a know-it-all. The second kid has less innate capabilities but is a learn-it-all. Well, we know the end of that story. The learn it all will do better than the know it all. And it's true for CEOs and it's true for companies. Nadella even says, the practice of being vulnerable enough to say, I'm not perfect, I'll never be perfect, but I can learn. Can you imagine if all leaders in the world were practicing that on the day-to-day? How would the world look like if that was the case? How much progress the world would make? And that research actually changed my life too. I remember in my former company, we had a workshop which was focusing on growth mindset. And I remember going out of that room and being like, wow, this is just mind-blowing. I used to see failure as a really bad thing and just blaming myself a lot for failing, while actually looking at opportunities. I was actually focusing a lot on what I cannot control rather than focusing on things that I can control and find solutions. And that's a practice that I think all CEOs and companies should have. They even got rid of the stack system to replace it with a no rating system, and this actually fostered teamwork, collaboration, growth, and development. Nadella also chose a new chief people officer called Kathleen Hogan for her very empathetic leadership style, which is another core principle of Nadella's culture renovation. In 5 years of Nadella taking over, Microsoft market capitalization grew from $300 billion to $1 trillion. Yet Nadella is completely against celebrating that milestones that he considers as not meaningful and arbitrary, and that rejoicing about it would mark the beginning of the end. The lesson from that story is that companies and CEOs need to keep learning, and we need collectively to start embracing the vulnerability of saying I'm not perfect and I'll never be perfect, and that's okay as long as we keep learning and developing ourselves as learning beings, especially after those 2 years of pandemic and working from home. We need to start listening and reconnecting employers with employees. And to be honest, there are not a lot of success stories the size and the scale that Satya Nadella's is creating. And yes, Nadella and Hogan are still creating that story, trying to close the gap between the aspired culture and the daily experiences of employees. The habit of drinking from Microsoft Kool-Aid is actually a very bad habit that they're trying to overcome. Microsoft is not ready to declare victory yet, if not ever. Thank you for watching that video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please feel free to comment, share, like that video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week. Bye!